you to like maybe passing out some bulletins or offering and stuff. And he was like, "Or sing or do a testament." And I was like, "Well, I don't really want to sing, so I'll give a testament." A lot of you may not know me. My name is Tammy Braglin. I just started coming to this church. I actually am married John Braglin. And I fell in love with this church probably about a year ago. We came to visit and hear Uncle Archie preach. And when I walked into this church, I could tell that the Lord was here. It was small. There was maybe 8 people here that Sunday, and most of them were family. But I was like, this church has really got some growing to do, and I could just feel the Lord in here. I could feel you guys were excited about it, and you wanted it to grow. And I grew up holiness. I grew up in a little church called Crumpler's Crossroads Church of God of Prophecy, right over the hill in 95 and 70, across from a little old farm. So we grew up with people really worshiping the Lord. The first time I stepped into a Baptist church, I really thought those people were dead. Because we really grew up with people really worshiping and praising the Lord, and they weren't scared to show the Holy Ghost. And I'd kind of like to share a little story about that. My sister and I grew up living like right behind our parents in Selma as well. Lived on a farm, and my grandparents had this old barn. It was an old 2-story type barn, and in the middle of the barn was an old piano. It was very out of tune. We used to go in there and play church, and we played church. We played Holy Ghost. And we got in trouble by our mom, who's not here, because she thought we were mocking the church. She thought we were making fun of people in the church. And my grandpa got all over her. She's like, don't do that. He says they're doing what they see in church on Sunday. They're paying attention, and they know what's going on in church. And that's just how you teach a child to love the Lord and to worship and praise. So we used to do that all the time, especially when we knew Grandpa was going to take up for us for playing Holy Ghost. We just thought it was interesting. We really got into it. We loved it. But I got saved when I was a teenager. I was probably about 13 or 14 years old. And growing up in a holiness church, we were taught about being saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Ghost. Taught about baptism and what that meant. I wasn't always a good Christian, and I slipped from the Lord. Probably when I was in my 20s and 30s, I got married. And I had children, and my sister and I grew up. Our life wasn't easy, and we had some issues growing up, and I stepped away from my family, especially my mom, and it wasn't easy. And I love my mom. I never stopped loving her, but sometimes, the devil just really gets in your life, and he made me see things that wasn't there. And I had to ask for forgiveness of myself, and especially with my mom. And we have a wonderful relationship now. And I want to say that a lot of you may already know, I know there's been some talk, but my sister and I were adopted. And my mom she doesn't put that out there much, but it is probably one thing in my life, other than the birth of my children, that I am very, very proud of. And it took me a long time to say that, especially as a child. Whenever we were growing up, I'm 45, so when you found out that a child was adopted, all you thought was the worst things. Why was that child adopted? What happened? This and that and that. But we were adopted by our aunt, and when we found that out, it was hard. It was hard for our whole family. But today, if somebody was to ask me about that, I would tell you that was the best thing. Even when I went for 20-some odd years and didn't speak to my mother and didn't have a relationship with her, I still would have chose her. If I had to pick a mom out of the box, it would have been her. And I thank her, because I am today because of my mom. She made me who I am. And she taught me and my sister a whole lot about life and a whole lot about things. And she helped lead us to the Lord when my grandparents were very devoted Christians. And my mom helped us in church, and she helped us to realize that no matter what kind of bad you go through, God is always there. And we've learned that along the way, and we've had trials and tribulations. I've been married before, divorced. Wasn't something I would have wanted. I believe in the sanctification of marriage. I believe that it should be together forever. We were raised that way. We were taught that, so when my divorce happened, it devastated me for years. And I do have 2 children. A lot of you don't know my children. I have a 20-year-old son who's awesome, and I have a 16-year-old daughter who's awesome. And unfortunately, Another sad thing is they're not in my life right now. They're with their dad. Not because of my choice, but their choice. You know, another thing that happens when you get remarried. Sometimes they don't agree with everything that you do in life. And I know God's working in that, and that He will fix that as well. You know, I've learned a lot in life as I age is that the devil loves to play with your emotions, and he loves to attack you when you have things going on. And I have learned that as a Christian that I have to just keep praying that God's going to do the right thing, and I know that He is, and He has done a lot of good in my life. So with that, I would like to say that coming into this church, I've always been involved in church. Like I said, stepping into a Baptist church, I was like, what am I doing? But I love being a part of church. I love being involved. I love being able to learn new things, and I learn new stuff all the time.
We love you involved too.
Yeah, thank you. But I actually came from a church in Selma Original Free Will Baptist Church, a little church on the corner, and I love that church as well. They have amazing people in that church. That church also started out like you guys, teeny tiny, not a lot of people in there. They had some issues with their pastors, you know, growing, pastor to die, and then a new pastor coming in. And they have gotten really, really big, but you know, sometimes you just feel like you don't fit anymore. And I had felt for a long time that God was asking me to go somewhere else and to do something else. And I finally listened to Him. And I'm learning with a lot in my life that I just need to shut up and I just need to sit still and listen to God. And if my husband was here, he'd tell you that I don't like to do that very much as far as shutting up and listening. So I tend to like to speak back and speak my mind. But I'm a doer, and I'm a fighter for the Lord, and I like to put it out there. And a lot of you know that I'm a program coordinator at the Harrison Center for Active Aging, which is where I met the two beautiful ladies in the back. They come for some of my classes there. And I had no idea that they came to this church until I visited that Sunday. So for me, it was amazing to realize that I was not only coming to a church where I knew family, but I also knew people here as well. And I knew Miss Kathy. I had seen her a few times at the original church where she had visited. So it was nice to know that you guys are so awesome and so welcoming. And I have brought my family here, and I've been trying to get John to come with me. So, and you guys are just have big arms and you welcome people, and I think that's amazing. One of the things I will say about being a Christian is that I've learned that every single day that God's still working on me. And that is something that I tell the seniors at work when we're talking. We talk, the two things we're not supposed to talk about at work is politics and religion, and I think that's two things we always talk about. Always, for some odd reason. Two things we're not, two things we do. So my office is an open door, and typically if you come to work, you will find somebody in my office at pretty much at all times. And most of the times that's the main thing that we're talking about is religion. And I have learned so much from the seniors in my life. They're amazing, and the amount of knowledge that they have taught me just about being a Christian, and the fact that God doesn't expect us to be perfect, and He knows we're going to sin daily, and we're forgiven. Doesn't give us a free pass, but we're forgiven. And it has made me realize that it's okay for me to mess up. It's okay for me to make mistakes, because I do know that He's still working on me, and I love that. And I remind myself of that all the time. And one of my favorite Bible verses is "Be still and know," and I've had to learn that with as far as keeping my mouth shut and shut up and listen. So I love being a Christian, and I haven't, like I said, I haven't always followed a path that I should have followed, but being a Christian is very important to me. And sometimes I struggle because not everybody in my life is a Christian. Not everybody that I love is a Christian, and it's hard sometimes being the Christian and other people aren't. And you have to kind of make yourself do a checklist, you know, what I need to be doing to help that person, and what I need to be doing in my life to show the strength that needs to be given there. And, you know, not just in my immediate family, but in my outside family. And the biggest joy that I've had with this church is bringing some of my family to church with me, you know, and it makes me proud to sit in here and to look back behind me or beside me and see my family members, as well as I have 3 additional children now with John, with his children, and they've been to church with us a few times, and it makes you feel good to know that your family's here with you, and they want to be, not just because you're here, but they want to be here. So being a Christian is awesome. and it's nice to know that I can mess up and God still loves me.
Amen. Give her a hand. I was just reminded to mention Brother Bobby Hawley and which thing that I would definitely enjoy to do, because I love Brother Bobby. He's a great person. And let me just set that to the side. He's sick. That's the first time he's missed in 12 months. And at his age, he is very healthy. We're happy about him, but we love him, and he's got a welcoming spirit about him. And keep him in your prayers this morning. Thank you, Tammy. Yay! Tammy is a very special lady, and I knew it seemed like the first time I met Tammy, and I was pretty impressed with Tammy. And you know, and there's a couple people, and maybe more, I don't know, but if you don't mind me saying, there was a couple people. By the way, you can turn to Nehemiah in the Bible. If you want to turn, it's going to be up here on the screens too. But why I'm saying this, kill two birds with one stone, right? And I was really impressed with Tammy, and I'm like, man, I sure wish Tammy would come to church. Tammy had church, so I didn't try to push the issue too much other than let her know you're still welcome if you do come. You know, and she came, and through Tammy, me and Dorothy found out about the Johnson County Senior Center, and last year we did have food raising time. You'll know for about a month we collected canned goods and stuff, and it made me feel good to be able to help out to the center. We're going to do that again. Maybe once, twice this year. I want to get up with you and find what's a great month that we can do that, if they may have more needs in one particular month than the other. So thankful to have her with us. As immediately she come in and she's telling the family about it. Folks, that's all we have to do to build this church. Is come in, get excited about that, and share that with somebody. No, everybody's not going to come that you would like. And yeah, it can at times be difficult, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes. There's times I can get up on the spur of the moment, I walk over there and I'll talk to somebody. It becomes easier as you invite people to church. It really does. And of course, the devil's not going to let it be too easy, so he's going to, say some things to your mind to try to keep you from doing that, because we all know the devil doesn't want church to grow. He doesn't want that to happen. But what I was going to say was, there was two people I know that come up to me and volunteered to do something in the church, just right out of the blue. It blows me away, because I've never been a volunteer. One of them was Calvin of France, my friend. I was so excited to have him, his wife, and Samantha, and we love her just as much. And I hate it when she came, but she's in Greensboro, and that's the only reason she's not here, because of that work up there every Sunday. When you see her, she's come all the way from Greensboro to be her family and to show up in church, and she's a young girl, and that blows me away too. We love her, and I'm just happy to be a positive influence in her life, and that's the way I see it, and to try to be like that with others around us. But the two people I know come up and volunteered. One was Calvin, and one was Tammy, the other day on the phone. That's good stuff, and God's at work at Pleasant Plain. And we have a decent number here this morning. I hadn't counted, and that's with a bunch of folks, unfortunately, but are sick or gone or couldn't be here this morning. We still have a decent group of people this morning. I can't give about 25% of this message this morning on Vision Sunday. I'd love to be able to share the entire thing, and I'm going to try to kind of hit some highlights, and I think I can kind of get the point across, or some points across this morning. So let's go ahead and begin. I'm going to put my watch out here. I don't want to overdo it. I don't have no choice. But I'm going to try not to overdo it too much for you this morning. And so in Nehemiah chapter 1, beginning with verse 1, we're going to read through this chapter. The words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah. It came to pass in the month of Chislev, in the 20th year, as I was in Shushan, the citadel, or Shushan, the palace, that Hanani, one of my brethren, came with men from Judah. And I asked them concerning the Jews who had escaped, who had survived the captivity, and concerning Jerusalem. And they said to me, the survivors who are left from the captivity in the province are there in great distress and reproach. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and his gates are burned with fire. And so it was when I heard these words that I sat down and wept and mourned for many days. I was fasting and praying before the God of heaven. And I said, I pray, Lord God of heaven, O great and awesome God, and you who keep your covenant and mercy with those who love you and observe your commandments, please let your ear be attentive and your eyes open, that you may hear the prayer of your servant, which I pray before you now, day and night, for the children of Israel, your servants, and confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned against you. Both my father's house and I have sinned. We have acted very corruptly against you, and have not kept the commandments, the statutes, nor the ordinances which you commanded your servant Moses. Remember, I pray, the word that you commanded your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I'll scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and keep my commandments and do them, though some of you were cast out into the furthest part of the heavens, yet I'll gather them from there and bring them to a place which I have chosen as a dwelling for my name. Now these are your servants and your people, whom you have redeemed by your great power and by your strong hand. O Lord, I pray, please let your ear be attentive to the prayer of your servant and to the prayer of your servants who desire to fear your name, and let your servant prosper this day, I pray, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man, for I was the king's cupbearer. I was the king's cupbearer. I don't know if everybody here, I think there's some folks here this morning who don't know what a cupbearer was. Let me demonstrate this morning. Fruity. Back in the days of old, when way back before automobile and television and radio, electronics and all of that, way back before electricity was, they didn't have chemistry labs, right? No chemistry labs, nothing like that, no scientists to speak of. And when there was a king there, on the throne, well, they had to be careful that he wasn't murdered, because just like today, there's people that hate people in authority. They just hate them, and there would be people that would try to kill the king. Kings had enemies. And so even they had to be careful about the food that was put before the king, what the king drank. You see, because the wrong person get in there, and it's been known to happen, put a little poison there in the cup, right? So what they did is they had somebody to test it for them, right? So here comes Nehemiah in the book of Nehemiah. If you haven't read this book, it's 13 chapters, and you can read that in a couple hours, even if you're slow as I am. And so I recommend you to do that and learn much more about it, because I'm just looking at a few things this morning. So here comes the cupbearer, right? Nehemiah. And he had to taste it first before it was passed on to the king. And then, of course, if he quickly fell over dead, well, the king wouldn't drink it. And then they would take him out the door. Now, how many of you would love to have the cupbearer's job this morning? Thank you very much. We got one here. Good job, Kyla. Good job. Not too many of us, though, would like to have the job that Nehemiah had, because that means you might not live long enough. And see, in our day and time, of course, this is the way we think. But in actuality, in spite of the fact really none of us would like that, it was really a very prestigious job to have. It was a very honorable job. I mean, we really have to pat Nehemiah on the back to be willing to do this kind of job, knowing that this might cost him his life. But you know what? Let's think about it on the other hand. He got the position to stand before the king of the land. He actually had a very prestigious position. Nehemiah actually had a lot of influence too, because he became a close friend of the king. Now, it was a pressure position because you couldn't stand there before the king and complain about stuff. In fact, in those days, you didn't even go before the king and look disappointed or look angry. You didn't make any snide comments or any negative remarks. Dude, they would tote you out the door. This was serious stuff when you stood before the king, and there was a protocol that had to be followed, and you just didn't act like that. Yet, Nehemiah was brave enough to even do that before the king. He took a chance with his own life because of the things we're looking at this morning. It was because of that position that he chose that really none of us would like to choose that put this man in the history books forever. So you see how God can at times, this is really not part of my message, but I wanted to point it out. You see how God sometimes takes something bad and then turns it around to accomplish something great. God's amazing like that. He really is. Well, when we get to the first few verses, we find that Nehemiah, says he was in the palace, and he was in Babylon in that day. Now understand, the book of Nehemiah is actually really one of the oldest ones in the Old Testament. If you was to kind of put this in chronology of how the events took place, well, we would find that it come in about 38 in the book of the Old Testament, because it would be right next to the last book of the Old Testament, Malachi. So understand, when you're reading and studying, some things are they're grouped together in content, grouped together in poetry, grouped together in law, grouped together in different ways, though Genesis is one of our older books, and it starts off with the beginning. Actually, you can take this book of Nehemiah and also Ezra, that no doubt Ezra and Nehemiah is understood to have been one book way back years ago. Both of these kind of coincide, one right after the other event. They were both connected, they both knew each other, and what was going on here in Nehemiah was God speaking out loud for the last time in the Old Testament. That this was really the last time that God was going to have a divine word to the public until the time John the Baptist was going to come on the scene some 400 plus years later. And so that's the time, that's a little bit about the background of Nehemiah. But when we get started in it, we find out that Nehemiah was, and by the way, when this book's, some of you students of the Word understand that things in the Old Testament are grouped toward pre-exilic, what they call pre-exilic, exilic, post-exilic, which means the time period was either before Israel was in captivity, during captivity, or after captivity. And at this time, after the children of Israel were in captivity and they were returning back to the land of Israel, that's what was going on. Jerusalem was torn down. There were Jews in it, but many of them had been carried away, and they were starting to be allowed to come back little by little to their homeland. Okay. Now, Nehemiah, who was a Jew, was still in Babylon. Okay, which was the group that had carted them away in captivity. And Artaxerxes was the king at that time, and Nehemiah was his cupbearer. So a group of people was coming back from Jerusalem, and Nehemiah seen them, and Nehemiah went out and says, hey, what's it like back home, so to speak? What's it like with my kinsmen, my family? How are they doing? And what's the city, the holy city, the capital of the Jewish world, Jerusalem, what's it like? And the report came back, and we just read that, you might miss some of that. So the report came back not too good. Why the city lays in waste. The people were under terrible distress and discomfort, and the wall of the city was torn down. Now Nehemiah is all about the rebuilding of the wall of Jerusalem. That's what it's all about. And when you think about it, the first thing you might think this morning is, well, what was so bad about a wall being torn down? And why would God get involved in a wall around the city? And so, understand today is, I look at the vision that we have today of being just as important, if not more important, but just as important to me as this wall was. Walls were around cities back in those days. They called them fortified cities if they had a wall around them. And basically, that wall was there to do two things. One was to keep people out of the city. And another thing, it was to keep people in the city that belonged there. Walls were walls of defense. And walls were put up to keep armies from attacking and from killing, so that the men and so that their wives, so that their children could be safe. They put a wall up. It would be much harder for enemies to attack. And then it was a place of safety so that their children, wives would be safe on the inside, and so that they wouldn't get too contaminated with the bad views that were out in the world, that they could stay inside the city. They didn't go outside the city a whole lot, and that could keep them in and help keep their minds in the right place. So Nehemiah asked that question, and they said it's all messed up and it's all tore down. That simple thing, folks, stirred Nehemiah up. That simple thing caused Nehemiah to see the need. That's the first point. To see the need. It don't sound like that much. And why would Nehemiah feel like he had to get involved in that, right? Why, he lived in the king's house. Huh? He had a prestigious job. He was somebody in that kingdom. I could see where Nehemiah might just stop and say, well, I hate it for my old kin folks and stuff, but most of them I really don't know. I haven't even talked to them. I feel sorry for him. And then just to go on about his life. Why, he didn't have to get involved in that affair, right? You know what that's called today? Apathy. Apathy. Apathy is a terrible tool of the devil. Can I tell you that? It's a terrible tool of the devil. Apathy means you get this no-care attitude about things. Man, what can you do with a person today when they just don't care about things that are good? When people get to the point, right, where all they care about is their own self. I mean, I understand, at times that children think like that because they're maturing, they're growing, they have to learn. And I love kids, and I love to see kids playing. I love to see kids enjoying themselves. And yes, I understand they're thinking like that, but it's kind of up to us, parents and teachers and stuff, to help train our kids that in the big picture is more. Life is more about just me and what I get out of things. Then life's also about other people that are around me. I'm one, and there's so many more. If I'm worth $1, right, and there's 1,000 people around me, that's $1,000 out there, And people are important. And it's up to us as teachers to teach that. Well, see, Nehemiah, and it must have been a God thing, because this thing tore his heart up. He's seen this as a vision. And no, he didn't go to sleeping at night, a dream come to him. It hasn't me either. And no, I don't think there's no indication that God actually spoke to Nehemiah and said, Nehemiah, I got a job for you to do. No, neither did he me. But he had such a desire in his heart to do this. He had such a burden. This thing bothered him so much. I've got a vision today, folks. Some people, and it's like, yeah, big deal, preacher. Can I tell you, everybody doesn't have the vision today. Everybody don't see it. Just like in Nehemiah's day. It didn't mean nothing to, what about all the other Jews? Why come they didn't step up and do something? Apathy, perhaps. Didn't care, or didn't care enough to step up, to do something about the issues of the day. Folks, the vision for us today, Vision 2020, is to build this church. Simply put, is to build God's kingdom right here. Right here. It's very special. It's very important. Very important. I want you to see it. Not only is that the pastor's vision, it's our vision. It's everybody's vision that gets on board. Because we don't want our church to die. God works through churches to reach people, to help them in their lives. He took it personal in what he did. It wasn't just about those people that he knew or the people of his race, right? The Jewish people over there that he never met and stuff. It wasn't just about his family members. He took it personal. It was about him. It was his wall that was torn down. His city that lied in waste. And his people that were suffering. He could see that. The first thing you got to do in order to reach any kind of goal is to have a goal. And to see the importance of it and the need of it. I'm here to tell you that in all the things that there is in this world, there's nothing on earth more important than people getting saved. Amen. There's nothing on earth more important than people having their lives straightened out, having their marriages fixed, having their families stay out of trouble and their kids grow up with good morals and ethics that stay away from the addictions of the world. We wouldn't have so many shootings and killings and stealing and everything that's going on if more people would get in church and get under the Word. Amen. And take this thing personally. And God's not going to make you do that. The vision is right in front of our eyes. I'm so heartbroken to the churches that are so cold and complacent and don't really care about the people like they ought to. My heart bleeds for not just us, for the churches around us that are dying. Statistics today say that only 10% of churches across the board are growing today. Only 10%. 90% of our churches are dying. 90% of our churches are failing. I got proof right here this morning. Statistics. And my heart breaks. Can you feel that personally this morning? Can you see the need? Right here. If you was here a year ago, you could see it. He felt that burden. He felt it. The Bible said after the guy told him what things were like, the Bible said that he cried like a baby, a grown man. He cried. He started praying and mourning. This thing went on for days, day and night. Nehemiah wouldn't stop crying like a crybaby. He wouldn't stop crying about this thing. He had a God burden in his heart. God burdens don't go away. You can feel sorry about something and then forget it and go about your business later on a lot of things, but when God puts a burden in you, it don't go away. You can try to overlook it, you can try to get away from it, you can run away from it a while, you can hide, you can do like Jonah and take a ship and go to somewhere else. But everywhere you go, guess what? There it is. Everywhere you go, there it is. You can't get it out of your life, you can't get it out of your mind, you can't forget about it. That's kind of the way it is with me, with churches in need. With God's church, that's the way it is for me. I can't quite get away from it. It keeps coming back to me. When God puts a burden in your heart. I'm not the only one like that. There's a lot of people like that. And some of you like that, you got a burden. I wish to God not only some of you, but all of you had that burden. You know, he just cared about the people. That's all it was to it. He cared about the people. He cared about somebody else. He cared about the Jews. He cared about the state of the people. He wept for days and days and days. He cried about it. You know what God uses a burden for today? He uses a burden to motivate people. Doesn't he, though? I mean, if you don't feel for it, anybody, if you don't care what goes on with people, you ain't going to invite them to church. You don't care whether they live or die. You don't care whether they go to heaven or hell. You care nothing about anybody. You ain't going to invite nobody. When you start caring enough, you get out of that seat and you start doing something. You know, I can do my part, right? But what's going on here in this church is bigger than me. I like that, don't you? I like saying that. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than Dorothea. It's bigger than my family. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than all of us. Why? Because God's reaching out to new people, new people, new people. And I'm so excited about it. Sometimes I don't sleep good at night. I'm so excited about it to see a new person walk into those doors and to understand that here's somebody new that God can reach with the message of Jesus. I don't care what brings them in here. I'll do whatever it takes to get somebody to walk through those doors and give them the sound of the truth of the gospel. And let me tell you today, if church is going to grow, we're going to have to get out of that seat of complacency and that seat of doing everything the way it's always been done and step out of that like Peter, step out of that boat and get out there where Jesus is, out there in a new territory. That's what's going to bring them in. That is what's bringing them in. Oh, it's a good thing to me. I like it. I get really excited, but I can't go over much of this message this morning. Then he prepared a plan. That's what he did. You know, and a lot of Nehemiah's strategies, you can read on through the book and you'll find it, and I can't do that this morning. I can't go over it. But the Bible said that after he felt this burden, after he cared about these people, after he wept and cried, the Bible said he got on his knees to pray. And this began, when he done this was the beginning of Nehemiah's strategy. Now, if you want to know today anything about leadership, anything about being a leader, how to lead, go to Nehemiah. Nehemiah sets the best example I know of in the Bible about leadership. And then from Nehemiah, your understanding will spread out and you'll see how other people in the Bible who were leaders, how they become and how they thought and what motivated them to be the leaders that they became. I heard it said many times. I've heard it said many times in churches, and I've been to 2 or 3, and I heard people say, well, you know, and I've had them tell me, what we want in with a preacher is we need somebody that will preach the word and visit the sick. Now, I've had them tell me firsthand that's what they need. You know, and you'll hear that. You can hear that a lot from people. And the sad thing about it is people just don't know. People just don't know what they really need at all. Because they need a whole lot more than that. Because you see, just getting another preacher in, and the sad thing is a lot of preachers don't understand this either. The fact of the matter is a lot of preachers aren't leaders. I'm sad to say. They can become leaders. Leaders aren't born, folks. Leaders are made. Nobody's born a leader. They're born like everybody else. Leaders are made and built by God. And some of the reason today our churches are dying is because it lacks leadership. You can't blame it all on the people. It ain't all the people's fault. They don't understand what to do. Churches need a whole lot more than somebody just to preach and visit. That's just a little bit, folks. The job will never get done like that. I had preachers tell me too, one time he said, son, years ago, you know, kind of pious, I didn't like the way he did. Son, it's like you're talking down to somebody, you know what I mean? Son, all you need to do is love the people. He'd been in ministry a long time, you know. He thought he was giving me some good advice. And I thought about it. I still remember that as today. And I thought to myself, that's not right. That's not right. That's not enough. What? All you got to do is love the people, and then churches are going to grow, and churches... No, that ain't going to work like that. Yes, love's important. I haven't even had a chance yet to preach a message on love, and I look forward to that. Love is important. Of course it's important. It's important to preach, it's important to visit. Those things are important, but churches won't grow just because you love people. That's just like a game of chess. And if two people sit down and play chess, and I came up to one of them and says, okay, what are you doing here? Well, we're playing a game of chess. Well, where are you going with that? Well, I'm just going to try to win the game. Well, how you going to do that? I just love to win. I just love to play chess. Well, I tell you what, folks. I don't know how many of you play chess. I ain't played in a long time, and I never was real good at it. But I tell you, you go to sit down with somebody that plays chess and have that kind of attitude and see where you get with that. You ain't going to win the game that way. I don't care how much you love to win. I don't care how much you love to play chess. Without some kind of strategy, you ain't going to get it. Nehemiah would have never got that wall built had he sat around and said, well, I just love to work with a trowel and a mortar. I just love to spread some mortar and put a stone on top of it. I'm sure he really did. That's what they had to do, though. And the Bible says that they grabbed a mortar in one hand, a tool in one hand, and the other hand a weapon, a sword. Yes, they did. Well, I can't even get into all that. That's some good stuff, boy. I can't even get into all that. No, it takes strategy today. And I'm happy to say we've had strategy all along. We began with strategy, and I don't even have time to get into all the strategy. I can't even get into it all. But there is a strategy at work. In other words, there's a method to it. There's a plan in action. There's a plan. And God is going to work through the plan of action to get the job done. And we can come to church every Sunday and we can sit around, we can gather around the altar and we can pray, God, fill our church, God, fill our church. And if that's all we do, we'll never see anybody come into the church. I mean, let's face it, how do I know that? I know it firsthand because I spent so many years before I come here, I spent so many years sitting back waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for the phone to ring until I quit waiting. And God would never do that. No matter how much I prayed, God would never do it that way. There's two ways He works miracles today. Two ways. Two ways God works a miracle. One, He takes nothing and He makes something out of it. Just like He did this world. And two, He takes something and makes more with it. Right? And God builds His church through taking something and making more of it. That something's us. He uses what we say. See, I know that when I will go up to somebody and I say, hey, where are you churching at now? Where you go to church at now? And then they kind of, unless they give me an excited answer, I'm like, you target. That's what I'm thinking. You're my target. I'm after you. I want you. Okay? And where are you going to church at? You know, and they hum-ha around with it or something. I'm like, well, please come to our church. Please come. Not everybody comes, but a bunch of people have. And it's fun. When you get to start doing it, it's exciting, it's fun, you know, and you go up and you know you got a good message and you know you got a good thing and there's no better message than that people need Jesus in their life. It ain't going to hurt anything in you. It ain't going to make you a worse hunter. It ain't going to make you a worse fisherman. It ain't going to make you worse on your job. It ain't going to make you a worse husband or wife or kid. It just helps. In every area, it helps. It's a good thing. Don't let the devil tell you, oh, you don't push people. Oh, you don't want to pressure people. That ain't nothing but the devil keeping you from doing anything. He wants you to sit back and not ask somebody. He's winning the war. 90% decline. I'm so heartbroken about that, folks. He began a plan. And just in this prayer, he had praise, he had confession of where they were at. He brought the word and what he reminded God, what God had already said. You know, I almost want to say, well, he was a courageous fellow, he was daring. God, do you remember when you said that if they turn back to you, that you'd bring them back home? He reminded God. He brought the word in it. And God liked that stuff. God liked that stuff. And then he petitioned God. And then he went into action. Nehemiah went up to the king. And the king said, why are you so sad, Nehemiah? I'm sure Nehemiah had to muster up every bit of courage and every bit of strength in his bones to look at the king that day, knowing that he could lose his life just like that, and ain't a thing he or anybody else would do about it, to look sad even or say the wrong word before the king. But see, God was strategizing long before this. God put this man in this position where he was at. God taught this man the right way to behave, because God wanted to use Nehemiah to go back and build the walls of Jerusalem. And God had a plan when Nehemiah never even knew it. And Nehemiah got so burdened, he went before the king. He said, well, he said, how can I be happy when the city, our capital, is torn down, the walls are torn down, they're defenseless. Anybody attacks and they're dead like dead ducks. And there's no hope, they're in despair. It's tragic. How can I be happy, king? Well, he told him. And the king says, okay, what would you like me to do for you, Nehemiah? Now, don't you know that God was working in all this? And by the way, let me tell you this. You'll never guess this, the king of Babylon, Artaxerxes, who family he was in? Esther's. Esther was his stepmother. I have a feeling, though, that he was kind of raised up right, you know. I had a feeling that she had a good word there, because Esther was a God-fearing lady. So Artaxerxes says, okay, what can I do for you? Nehemiah stepped up to bat. He didn't hear God tell him to do it. He didn't see nothing written on the wall for him to do it. He didn't see no visions in the night. He seen a need, like big well. See a need, fill a need. You know what he said in the robots? See a need, fill a need. Yeah. That's the way it was. He seen a need. He said he'd step up back and fill a need if he could. And oh God, the king sent him men with him. They sent papers and tons of materials and lumbers and stuff from another city, and they went back and went to work on the walls. You know what? He had it done. This wall that was torn down all around the city of Jerusalem without any machinery we have today. Them people, because he rallied up the leaders around him. He rallied up the leaders, and everybody got busy. They went out right in front of their location where their families were, and they started putting together the wall. Oh, was it that simple? No, they got attacked by people. You always get attacked when you're doing God's will. You always do. You think we're going to be attacked? That some people are going to be attacked? You think some people are going to be angry this year? Of course they are. Of course they are. You think one or two might quit? They might quit. We don't want nobody to quit. They might quit. You can't control what other people do. But you can control how that affects you. And you're going to answer for you. I'm going to answer for me. It's just a powerful message, folks. It's powerful, powerful. He had a plan. He had a strategy to get the job done. We have a plan. We have a strategy. It's already been in effect. It will continue to move forward. It will continue to be in effect. I have a vision. I have a burden. And I have a plan. Do you? You know, I can share this with you, and I'm not going to share this with you to give the church bragging rights. And I'm sorry that some folks couldn't be here to hear all this morning. I had no control of that, so I ain't worried about it. But you know, to just share with you, because just share with you, I want you to see the picture, what I want you to see. I want you to see God at work this morning, because some of you don't know. Because it wasn't but 1 year ago. We came in December, not last December, December a year ago, and the church was almost out. There were less than 10 people here. I never seen all 10 coming on one given Sunday, because out of the 10, they all couldn't make it every week. Church was about gone. This church was established in the 1880s. This is what I thought. This is what I've said a million times, and I don't mind sharing the story. Because just like Nehemiah, you have to see the despair before you move forward to the victories. But people went to work. God placed a vision. God had already placed a burden. And things began to happen, simply put. And within 5 months, the church tripled in the attendance. And by the end of the year, by now, the church has grown in attendance 5 times the number that it was. You know, that just brings, that makes me feel good. I hope it makes you feel good. Because I want you to walk out the door today not feeling bad. I want you to feel like if you have a winning team, a ball team or something, if you have a ball team and they're doing well, and they're winning, and they're going into the finals, and they're going to win, that's the way you need to feel as a church. Because you're part of a winning team. And I'm so excited about that, you know. I'm so excited about what God's doing. It's not easy to actually invite and see people showing up, you know. There's some churches, in fact, there's a lot of churches, they don't get no visitors. Never. And little by little, what they do is they just keep quitting. Till there's nothing there. Well, that's kind of where we started it. And and the whole thing is, it all comes back to God, because God himself said, I don't think I'm done with that spot over there at Johnson County called Pleasant Plain. I think there's a chance
Amen.
that maybe some of them people over there, right, get up off the seat to do nothing. Maybe if I stir them, maybe if I mention some thoughts, you know, maybe if we do this, that. Well, I think there's a chance them people might be able to see what's going on in the world around them, care enough that there's a chance that place might grow. People around might come to that place. And when they come, they'll bring me glory, and I'm going to help them in their lives. And then they'll bring me more glory. And then I'm going to serve them and heal them and forgive them. And then they'll bring me more glory. And we're just going to have a great relationship together. And so God cared, and so here we are. And we're just getting started, folks. We're just getting started. You know, the interesting thing about it, I happened to look at this just this past week, and this was like the report that we got from the conference meeting. And this is like the progress of the churches. And so I looked at this because I already know the state of our church is not very good. And you may say, well, I know churches run a lot of people. That don't mean they're doing real good. Because if they ain't growing, then they're dying. And there's churches that's got 100, 200 people in it today that's not making any ground. They're starting to decrease. Oh, how you know that? I got proof right here, folks. I got proof right here in my hand. And I looked at the Western Conference alone, and that's the conference that this church is in the Western Conference. And I'm not even talking about the Baptists and the Christian and the Church of God's Prophecy and all of them, but my understanding when I talk to them guys is they all have the same problem. The Catholic denomination, the churches across the board are all having the same problem. And guess what? Even the lady that's heading up and started the Catholic mission that we call mission, they got $2 million in the bank account, and they called herself a mission right on in Cary. But even the lady that was instrumental in starting that said we got the same problem going on. When I talked to her in our place too. That churches are dying. Churches are dying. And so I looked at this report, and I just looked at the Western Conference, and I counted it up, and there was like 44 churches in the Western Conference. They stretch out. The conferences are funny, okay? I mean, there could be a church across the street, might be Cape Fear Conference. It's the way they do the map, like the county map, you know? And so, but from churches, it stretched all the way to the first church in Wilson, which is one of our largest churches today, that's changed the name to Connect Church. Yeah, Connect Church. And they got one of the best pastors there is out there. I mean, he preaches much better than I do. He's good. Michael Proctor is a good preacher. And then all the way to Branch Chapel, which is one of our biggest Free Will Baptist churches. And all through the area, 44 of these churches. And I looked at the statistics for last year, and I had mixed feelings, you know. I got feelings of happiness this morning, but I also got sorrowful feelings too. I'm going to give you the good news first, and then I'll give you the bad news. The good news is when you look back at the total amount of people that we actually had literally coming into our church, and that is by decisions, and baptisms by letter, or just by profession of faith. The total memberships and people that's coming in today, that actually what you're going to find out, I got this report like sometime middle part of last year, so this was based on 80. The year, this is 2000, that would be 2018. So, because the reports, you know, they take the information, then the report comes out, and so it's for the preceding year. So, what I'm saying is, year before last, that's what these statistics are, so I won't get a new sheet until sometime this year. But I'm going to just go ahead and tell you that the overwhelming chances are that this little church right here at Pleasant Plain has brought more people into its membership than any church in the whole conference. And isn't that good? I mean, you know, do you want to be with the winning team, or you want to be on the losing side? Would you rather be like number 1 or number 2, or would you rather like be number 44? Would you like to be? Well, we're ranking 20. I don't know about you, but if I'm going to shoot at something, I want to shoot for the bullseye. I might not be able to make it right, but I don't want to shoot out yonder somewhere. I want to at least hit the target. Might as well shoot for winning. Now, it's not a thing of bragging, but folks, if you don't see the picture, you don't see God working. You don't see God at work. So I'm going to tell you, that's pretty good to me. In other words, I'll put it to you in another way. We went from being a 0 to a hero. From a 0 to a hero, we went from being 0 in growth to 1 year's time leading the way in church growth. That's also compared to churches that said they have 400 people going to it. We got at least one that said, at least they reported, they got 400 people attending. They had the same number come in, but they lost, I think it was 4, which drops their number down. I mean, in other words, if you gain 10 but 5 died, then your church has just grown by 5. And so even a church that's running 200 and something might have took in half the number that we took in. And then I can show you here over 10 churches on here that had nothing. They didn't take in nobody. And then I talked to a preacher the other week, and he had told me, he said, well, you know, the last time we baptized somebody was 2 years ago. I thought, folks, when are we going to get excited about seeing people saved? Now, I don't know I don't know your mindset on this, and some people just kind of think negative anyway, which is not faith. Faith is positive, thinking positive. It's time we get rid of that negative mindset, and it's time we start taking on a positive mindset, because Jesus commissioned us to go out and to win the lost, to preach the gospel. He didn't care how big the church was or what it looked like. He didn't commission his disciples to go out and build a brick church, to build one, put a steeple up on top of it to see how tall it could get. He didn't commission to that, but he commissioned them to go out into all the world, the whole world, and win the lost. Not just stop with your neighbor and your family member, but the whole world. It's good news, you know. It's just good news when you can actually look back. And I want you to take that with you. I want you to celebrate the victory, because everybody that's here this morning, and there's people today, you had an opportunity to invite somebody and bring them to church last year, and then you see a person come into church, then you are a part of it. And every person who's come and donated money to the church and put money in the pan, everybody who's brought a plate of food back here, everybody who showed up, everybody who's helped when they were asked to help to do something, you are a part of what's going on in the church. It was a great year last year. I don't even have time to share everything new and fresh and exciting and interesting that people enjoyed, that people came to church because they had something to do and they liked it and it was new and exciting to them. And there was programs started. Can I tell you that we're just getting started? We're just getting started. And do you see where things can go? That's the thing. When I came to the church, I was not in despair. And I looked around at so few people right there. I was not in despair. Part of me was sad. But I'm like, oh God, there's some potential right here. You know how much nicer it is? It's like, I think about it, it's like the people of Israel. When Moses took them out of the land of Egypt and they didn't have anything. They took the Egyptian spoils, right, and they were headed to the promised land. And God told the people, He says, I'm going to deliver you to the promised land. You would pray for 400 years. You prayed. Yeah, 400 years. That meant that they prayed, their fathers prayed, their grandfathers prayed to be took out of slavery. And God finally said, okay, the time is right, and I'm going to answer your prayer. It might not have been in your lifetime, but I'm going to answer your prayer. I don't know all when it's going to happen in my lifetime either, but let me tell you something. It's going to happen because I believe in faith and God's behind it, and it's going to happen. Whether it happens at the end of this year or the end of the next year, you know, the total plan is not going to happen in quite a few years because it's it's huge. Because we serve a big God. That's why. He's a big God. I'm not going to limit him by my little small vision. It's big. It's huge. And so we come out, and we're so fortunate today that we worship in a place that we didn't pay for. Most of us. There's a few here that's put money in for years, but very few, right? That's put money in for years. But all of us, we're in the nice building this morning because somebody else has worked. It's because somebody else has put money in. Somebody before us put into this, hoping that people would come. I like that too, you know. I know as I put my money into this church, as I invest into this church, that it's going to help people coming up in the future, today and tomorrow. Folks, I could just go on the rest of the day. So I'm not going to do that. I just got to stop. But just let me tell you this. Projecting ahead, this year is going to be a tremendous year. Last year was great. This year is even better. And from looking at the attendance now, that's typically in the 30s and 40s most Sunday, that we had a growth of 5 times the amount up to the point. Some come and go. Sunday's a little different. That's just the way that goes. I'm not going to be so bold as to expect 5 times the number, but I am going to reach out and say, Lord, I believe that looking at what's already happened, I believe that we can shoot for 100 people this year. Now, if we don't get, how many would say I believe we can get 100? Raise your hand. I believe we can get 100 people coming by this time next year. Raise your hand. I believe we can reach 100 people before the year's out. That's what you call faith. Jesus said, according to your faith, so be it unto you. If you don't believe it, you can't receive it. So number one, believe it. Now, I didn't say I know it would happen. I said I believe it can happen. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't have no godly knowledge. I don't have that. But I do know that if you pray according to the Word of God, you pray and you pray in the will of God. He said, and you believe it, you will have what you pray for. I'm praying in the will of God, but if it don't happen by the end of this year, then maybe the next year. If it don't happen by the end, maybe the next year. Now, once our church reaches, once we get 100 people, which is absolutely highly likely, and I'm believing, once we reach 100 people, we're actually at 80% of full capacity, because I've calculated the pews, and like we have pew right back there, that great family that's just come not long ago, sitting right there on that pew. And they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sitting in the center, and they fill up that pew. These pews on the side will hold 4 people, and they're full. And you little kids, you can skinny more in there. But we can hold 4 people on the pew. We can hold 5 people in the center. If you calculate the number of pews, that equals 125 people. Now, I know that the sign says 174 occupancy, but that's not talking about just this auditorium, by the way. I haven't come to understand that's all our buildings put together. You ain't going to get no 175 in here unless they standing and you got chairs everywhere, which will be fine with me. But I'm just saying, when this church reaches 125, it's at maximum capacity. It's full. There's no empty gaps on any of the seats. This church is full. Now, the rule and the logic is when the church reaches, or any building, when you have 80% of full capacity, you need to understand you're full. And the reason why is because when people come into a place, they leave gaps typically between families. You know, and the lady put a purse right here, and the book's right here, and the man will. And basically a family, if they sit on the same pew, will leave a gap. So that it's normal in a building that's full to have a gap, a space saved for somebody, whatever the case may be, there'll be gaps. So by the time a church is actually at 80% of maximum capacity, people need to understand the church is full at that point. It's filled up. It's full. Okay, when we reach that capacity of 100, we're looking at the church as full, and according to God's word, then we need to make room for more people. Because it ain't about numbers, and it ain't about buildings, it's about people, and we have to make more room for people. And so when we reach that point, we're going to install committees involved in searching outside of our facility and in relocation and finding a new place, whether new or existing or whatever. That's up to the committee and the church, and I don't have to do it. All I'm caring about is making more room. I don't care what color the walls are, you know, nothing like that, but making more room for more people. And that's what we're supposed to do. That's what the Great Commission is. If we ever get to the point we say, well, we got enough, you backslid. That's what you've done. If you ever get to the point you say, well, I like it like it is, and I don't care if anybody else comes in it, your heart's not right with God. Because he never said, okay, when you get your family here or a few people here, then stop and quit now, and it don't make no difference if anybody else goes to heaven or not. That's not the way that works. We never are satisfied. We always got to make sure we have room. Right now, we got plenty of room. But when we reach that number, we won't have plenty of room, and it's going to be time to make room. And yeah, that's going to take a whole lot more money, more than I got in my pocket. That's going to take a lot of money. That's going to take a lot of work. That's going to take God being behind every last bit of that. But God's in favor of that. And God's in favor of growth. And then Pleasant Plain will go outside of the area somewhere to a place that will hold more people, a place that actually be more accommodating, more state-of-the-art, if you will. And there's your plan. Folks, that's exciting. If that don't stir you, I don't understand why. Some of the problem today is that churches get to that point where they say us four no more, and we'd love to have you, but we want you to act and dress and look and talk and have the same color and be just like us. And those churches don't grow anymore. Them churches are dead churches because they're not inviting people to come in. And we're not that way. We got a great thing. Let's use it for the glory of God. I want to invite you this morning. We close out here in the prayer, and I'm sorry, I know it's long. I want to invite you to come forward this morning. Let's pray. I want to ask all those who are willing today, if you'd love to see the church move forward, you'd love to be a part of that. Because we can look back at those people that were a part of stuff last year, that were involved in what was happening. That's the reason it is like it is today. You want to be a part of that, would you come forward today? Let's kneel around this altar. Let's close out in prayer here. Everybody is willing. Come on forward. Let's pray around this altar. Let's show God that we're serious about the Great Commission. Come on, folks. It don't matter if you're saved or lost or one of us or member or not. Come on forward. Let's pray about this. It's okay. Let's show the Lord. Come on. Come on, guys. It's not too late. Work your way forward. Because in doing so, you're saying, Lord, I am excited. I want to be a part of what's going on. Thank you. Thank you, folks. I appreciate it so much. While I'm praying, I want each one of you to pray. Because, see, I can't just do it myself. I'm nothing but a little spark to try to stir other people up. That's what I'm doing. That's my job. And I'm doing it as hard as I can do it. But the reason we have the people around here this morning is because somebody else caught that spark. Somebody else got that vision. And they've shared it with other people. And it's so exciting today to think one day when we get up to heaven that we're going to be a part of something that moved to, we don't have not even idea right now where it's going to go. As long as you love one another, don't worry about people that you might not know or something. Get to know them. Go meet them. Be welcoming. Speak to them. Love them. Let's go to the Lord. Father, this morning, Lord, we're really excited about where you have brought your church today. Lord, and just being able to be a helper today, that's enough for me. And each of the people that's here is a helper to what's going on. God, that's a wonderful thing. And Father, we're not going to keep them late like this all the time. And Father, I'm so thankful that they were patient with us today so we could try to get part of this message out so next week we can move on. And Lord, I'm thankful for what you're doing. And I'm thankful for what you're going to do. And I'm looking forward to this year, 2020, being a great year for us. And Father, may we go do it again. Help us to bring people into the church. Help us to get the job done, to bring them in so that we can talk to them about their faith in you, so that we can get them to become an active part of us, Lord. I'm excited about who's going to come in and where we're going to be at by the end of this year. And Father, I'm excited about the future after that. The growth that's going to take place. The life that's going to be changed. But God, I'm sorry for the denomination. I'm sorry for the churches that can't catch the vision. I'm sorry for those who aren't willing to allow change to take place, that their church might actually grow. I'm sorry for the churches in our own denomination, in our own conference, Lord, that are declining in membership. More people are dying in their church than coming into the church. They're failing to carry out the commission. God, I don't want to be like that. I want to be on that part that's adding to your work. You're going to use people to do it. All of us. There's people, each one of these people here this morning, there's a person that only they can reach because it's their friend and their loved one. And they can invite them to church. God, help us as a group that when new people come in, that we step out of our comfort zone and we go be a friend to that person. Because God, we want to be one big, happy family. And we want to be welcoming to all people. No matter what color they are. It don't matter whether they got tattoos or not. It don't matter if they're suffering from addictions. It doesn't matter what they've done in their past. It don't matter if they were in prison. It doesn't matter if they've been through divorces. It's our job to love one another and to be welcoming and then lead the rest to you. Father, help us to be a welcoming people. Just like we want to be welcome here. We've been here a couple times. Now it's our job to look at somebody else and to step out of there and to be a friend to somebody else. And may we catch that vision as well, so that as people come in, they don't all shoot out the back door. Father, continue to bless your people, this church, and may you receive all the honor and glory in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, Amen.
Thank you.